I hit the button there and on this one. And happy Friday and welcome to our workshop for a really fun spiraling herringbone stitch rope. It's a really cool design that I've recycled over and over for lots of different things. And so I hope you'll love it too. And this is the workshop class, so feel free to jump in, ask questions. We have extra time to cover everything and share your ideas, because that's what I really love about these classes is the ideas are just amazing every time. So keep those coming. And yeah, and so I'll hold up the project here and then we'll switch to the mat. This is a really cool visual effect, I feel like, and it is really easily achieved with just a few basic little, adaptations to herringbone stitch. So that's what I'm going to teach you today. And I can show you lots of different variations of this too. So there's lots of stuff you can do. And so here's a close-up of it on the mat. Thanks, Janelle. All right, and so I've also got the beads here that I used. So what I'm showing is size 11 in this stitch, and then size 6. And what I did is I pulled out one color, but you could do like a rainbow, or any colors are going to work just fine. And it's really simple. It's just a 4-column herringbone rope with a stack up of 2 instead of working with just 1 for each round. And so I'll show you how this was done. The way that I remember to put my next one is just looking at where the former was and making sure I put a new 6/0 above the last one. But you can work this with different size beads. And so the real concept here that I wanted to share was that all you have to do is match the height of your bead. The next up from that is you can do like 8/0 with 6mm beads. And that's one I've got going here. That's our 8/0 barley ivory. And then these were some shell beads that I found on the strand wall. So they're little like blue iridescent shells. There's the description there. I think it says there, yeah, like a dyed blue shell. This was just one example of like all the stuff you could do. And then this design is finished by putting some beading wire inside and putting some crystals on the end, crimping, putting on a clasp, and then it's done. But there's so many ways you could finish them. You could put them on leather cord and make it into a necklace. You could do a lot of different things with finishing it as a bracelet, like another leather with a barrel knot, the large hole bead on the end. And then just before class, Carmen and I were talking about bead caps. Depending on the number of columns you create, you could find a bead cap. This one would need like a 10 or 12mm bead cap. So this is the 11/04 column that's called out in the handout. And so just a quick recap of herringbone. Herringbone stitch columns, they're always worked in a series of 2s. So this, you can see there's 4 columns. It's almost like a little square. But then when I was working this version, which is an 8/0 6mm beads, that's a 3-column. See, there's just 3 there. When I start getting up in size, I change the number of columns so that it stays more looking like a rope than a sock, I guess. You can make them with as many columns as you like, but then they kind of just collapse on themselves a little bit, which also could be a cool look. So definitely want to play with that. So what I used besides beads, in this case, it was the 11/0 Soul Gel Pink Metallic and the 6/0 Amber Mix, selecting out those little kind of amethyst ones. But you could also work it with those 6mm beads I showed and some 8/0. And for needles and thread, got the usual stuff. So got the size 12 beading needles and the 0.006 Wildfire. I did work the larger one, the 8mm here, with the 0.008 because this is thick and heavy, and so the 0.008 helps here. But you could get away with 0.006 if you wanted to. What else? I'm going to be at the end. I'm going to be pulling in some beading wire, and then I'm going to be using some pretty crimp covers just to kind of finish it off with some polish. There was a really cool sparkly one in there that I thought looked nice with the crystal. And these are from the strand wall. The SKU for these is in the handout, but these are a bunch of little crystals, and I'm going to pull out the 8mm crystal and use it as a kind of like an end cap for our design. You'll also need some 2x2 crimps, and you'll want to have any kind of clasp, whatever clasp you've got handy. I'm going to pull out some silver lobster claws, jump rings, And that's pretty much everything that we're going to need. So, and again, all that's flexible. So you can use anything that you would like to in the way of, findings. So let's start with thread. So definitely going to need to add thread. And I was going to show how to add thread on this one because I had just run out when I was working on it. So when you're first cutting your Wildfire, cut an amount that is comfortable for the length of your arms that you can pull in one wingspan without having to keep coming back. And, so cut a length that I usually do like a wingspan. And that way I know I won't have to get tangles so the usual wingspan advice there. And then what you'll want to do is take some pliers, and I've got some square nose chain nose pliers here. In the end of my Wildfire, I'm just going to flatten it. And this is that trick we always do for making it easier to thread our needle, because these are going to be a little tricky. They're size 12 beading needles, so they're a little bit smaller than the 10s and the 11s. But when you flatten them like that, they go through a lot easier. And then just bring it through about, maybe 7 inches or so. Fold over. And this is one of those designs that will work on a single strand. Get those out of the way. Okay, so I want you guys to be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm not going to work in that pretty rose color because there's just not enough contrast going on there. So I brought out some brights. I've got an 11-0 in turquoise, and then I've got the citron lemon. That will, I feel like that will stand out more and be just a lot easier to follow. Okay, and then of course, any questions as we're going, please jump in and ask them. And also we have so much time, we will repeat this as many times as needed so that everyone can walk away with a solid understanding of what we've got working here. Okay, so it's going to start with a ladder stitch. Let me get my keyboard tray out of the way here. Okay. So a ladder stitch, the standard one that we usually do, we're going to work it in stacks of 2. That's the only difference between our normal ladder process. And a lot of things start like this, so I feel like it might be something you guys have seen, but I'm going to go slow just in case. I'm going to pick up 4, and I'm going to try to get these to turn into a square shape. So go ahead and bring those down. And the amount of tail you should leave is between 7 and 10 inches. All we're going to do with that tail is weave it in. It doesn't need to become anything, like attach anything. So all you'll need is about that much. And when you go back through your beads, just go through the first 2. And when you pull tight, it should form a little square shape like that. And then what I like to do is go back through it just to kind of lock that down. And the knowledge that it is adding a pass, but that's, that's okay. And so it holds its shape a lot better when you do that. So there's our step 1. So that first little square there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue ladder stitching until I have a total of 8 stacks of 2. So for our 4-column design. And variations of that are totally okay. It'll change the look of your spiral, but it will still work. Everything I'm showing here will work with different counts. It's actually really fun to play with that and see what what you can create just by changing the number, as long as it's an even count, because keep in mind the herringbone, you need an even count to make that work. So there's 3, and let's just get on another one here. And all I'm doing is going back through to ladder stitch. So every time I add 2, I go back through the beads that were attached before it. And when you pull tight, they sort of sit next to each other, but they really lock in when you come back through them. So coming back through the ones that were just added here. So there's 4. And let's do that 4 more times. So picking up 2 and going back through the last 2. And for like how to hold your hand for tension, I actually do pinch the beads and work with it held. This isn't one that I usually work flat on the mat, and it kind of helps to get the tightness. But because we're going to go back through it an additional time to add the next rows above it, if it's a little wavy, like you can see how mine's kind of moving, that's okay. So just a few more. I actually made my thread pretty long, so I'm bumping things whenever I pull it. So I've got 2 to go. And then just 1 more. Coming back down through those ones that I just added. And there's a ladder of, that's 8 stacks of 2. How's everybody feeling about the ladder stitch part? I'll just give a second in case anyone wants to jump in the chat and say if there was any confusion there, we can go back. It seems like everybody's good.
Hey, Danielle, it's Carmi. So far, so good. Hi,
Okay.
Marguerite. How are you? I think we're good.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and do the next part then. So to join this into a ring, all we're going to do is we're going to take our working thread and just rainbow over and go through this one on the side. And then we're going to travel back and come through these again. You'll be exiting in the same spot, but it'll be joined into a ring. So let's just do that really quick. Go down through that side. So you'll see what'll happen here is it'll join together in a ring shape. And then what I want to do next is come up through the ones that we were exiting in the beginning. And there we go. So that's all tightened down. And we've got that first beginning ring for the stitch. And there's a lot of things you can do here to keep this round shape. If you have a dowel that's about 2 millimeters, it's going to fit this design. You can also use a crochet hook, and that's what I do a lot with when I'm making ropes. It's harder to show that on camera because it would be too tall for the field that I have here. But when I'm working on these starting the first maybe, I don't know, 10 rows, I use the crochet hooks that have a handle like at the bottom that's thicker, and you just slide it on there and it holds the shape. So try that if you're struggling with the round, the round shape, but it will automatically kind of support its own structure as you build it. So see, here's my first rows on the Rosey version. But once you've got a lot of rows built on, that round shape supports itself a lot better than it's going to in the first few passes. Okay, and so now the fun part, we're going to add an extra element to this. So I want to show something really quick before I do that. Grab another needle. So a size 6.0 seed bead is about the same height as 2 11s, roughly. And it's the height that matters when we're going to create these stacks, right? So we're going to build in stacks of 2 for the rest of the design. So you know how in our regular herringbone ropes, we come along and we just start doing, we would just pick up 2 seed beads and they would just build 1 by 1. The rows would only be 1 tall. This is going to be 2 tall. And that should work perfectly for 6mm, but keeping in mind, you can do this little test that I just did with any size of combination of beads and get it to work. You could even stack 3. 3 gets a little bit wonky in that you'd have a little more space, but you could stack 3 seed beads if you wanted to add a taller bead. The only real limitation you have is the internal diameter if the beads start to hit each other on the inside. But having them be large enough to actually almost connect inside the tube is kind of a win because it makes it hold its shape more. So just something to think about as we're building, that having it be wider is not necessarily a problem unless it's really wide. So being wider can help it sustain that structure. Meaning this bead is wider than those beads, but they're the same height. So that one concept could lead you through so much design possibility. And so I'm hoping that just by sharing that the light bulbs went off and you guys will have just amazing ideas. So another thing I want to touch on really quick is it does not matter if you like to work clockwise or counterclockwise. Just stay consistent, choose one and stick with it, and you'll have no problem. You can start going this direction, or you can start going this direction. It doesn't matter. So what I did here is I picked up 2 size 11, and I picked up 1 size 6, and I'm exiting from this stack of 2 here. And what I'm gonna do is just go down to the next one. And when I do that, what I'm hoping will happen automatically, and it did a pretty good job, is that my 2 11s will sit on one side and the 6 will be on the other. And then I'm just going to turn and come back up through the adjacent 2 11s. So we're just going to go around the ring. So I'm coming up through this next one here. And then a little tip that works for me when I'm working these, the tail's going to be in the way for a little while. I'll weave it in as soon as I've got enough places to go. But I kind of have to keep it out of the way for the first part. So there's that first little set. It's going to sit there and we're ready to put another one. So for every row, you'll only need to add 1 of your size 6 beads, and all the rest of them should just be stacks of 2 11s. And that positioning of where to put that 6, it'll be something that you'll see as you're going around. So here's 4 size 11. And I'm just going down through the next 2 in the ring. And they should sit side by side, 2 next to the other 2. Same thing, I'm going to come up and get 4 more. And go down to the next 2. And they should sit next to each other like that. And now I'm going to come back up to the next one. Four more. And now we've gone all the way around the ring. And so what we're going to do next is a step up. And this is something that you'll see visually as you're stitching, but you'll always just want to remember once you've been around the whole ring, if you've added 4 columns, that in that next section, we know where we would come up to the next 2, you're going to have 2 above it. So we just go through those. It's called stepping up. And in round stitches, there's lots of stepping up. And we'll have to do that after every completion of 4. We'll just go through those next 2 and then the 2 above it that we added in that first part of the round. So there it is. And so at this point, one more decision spot, and it does not matter what you choose. If you want your spiral to go clockwise or counterclockwise, if you wanted it to start heading that direction, then the next position for the 6/0 bead would need to be right here. I tend to work it in a more clockwise fashion, but you could start here and go that way. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to just That's why it's hard to map out in a like a diagram, because it really matters what direction people like to stitch. So you just have to kind of eyeball where it is. I'm going to just go through the 6-0. I picked up 4-11-0 because I'm working clockwise. So I'm not going to add my next 6-0 until I get to the other side, right? Because I want my next 6-0 to be over here. So I'll show you that. There's 4. And I know this part can be a little confusing, so please jump in if any of that didn't make sense. But what I was trying to communicate is that you could put it here and work that way, just counterclockwise. Or what I'm going to do is come over here and up through my next 2. And I'm going to pick up a 6 now. And that one is going to be my next one. And I'm going to spiral this way in a clockwise fashion. So there's 1 6-0. There's 2 11-0. And I'm just going to come down through my next 2. And this is going to be super floppy for at least 4 rounds, so don't worry. But you can see how it's stepping up. So it's heading this way, and it's going to just keep going. So let's turn and come up through the next 2. Always working on, pick up 2, go through 2, pick up 2, go through 2. So here's those are my my next, if this was a single bead, you just pick up 2. I'm treating each of these stacks like kind of like a single bead. So there's the 4, and I'm going to come down through those 2. All right, and so next I've got my tension is pretty tight, so getting into the beads is hard, but that's kind of what I'm going for, because I want it to be where my thread doesn't show. And keeping in mind, we're going to bend this into like kind of a round shape when you wear it as bracelet. So tight is good. And now we're ready to step up. So we completed adding 4 columns. And so now I'm just going to come up through all 4 of these beads. And I feel like, when I'm working, I can kind of see it. I can see where my next step up position is. And then I can see that there's 4. And that's kind of what I want to do, is just keep that symmetry going. So you get a spiral look without having to do any of those. If anyone's ever built one of those, like those herringbone rope stitches where the beads themselves actually spiral, that are built in like that, it's the same concept, but they go down 3 instead of 2. I bet there's people in this class who've done that one, so similar idea. So there's 2 there. I added that first column, and I'm going to come up through my 6-0. And so it's a little loose there. What I'm going to do is kind of like pull that together, tighten it up. And so just looking at this, I know I want to put my next 6-0 above those 2, like right there. So I'm going to start by picking up 2 11s and then my size 6 bead, and come down. And sometimes you have to help those 2 sit, but for the most part, they kind of just go right in the right spot. Okay, there's that. You see, we're just climbing up. There's 4 more. And there it goes. And now another step up because we're at the beginning where we started. So I'm just going to go through 4. And there we go. So just taking a look at this, you would say, okay, I'm going to make regular 11, and then my next 6 is going to need to go right there. So I hope that part is, I hope that part's making sense. Is how do I know when to add my 6-0? It's kind of just when you next see that spot pop up in your design.
Hey, Danielle, it's Carmi. Even Sharon's watching and noticed too that when you come out of that 6, then you know you're adding 2 11s and another 6.
Yep, and that usually is the case. There's one exception, and it's after you've made one complete repeat. It tricks you. I'll show you guys. We'll get there in just a second. It's the only spot where that's not true, but it's true that all the rest of the times.
Perfect.
But you'll see it right away because as you're working it, it would just jump out at you like, oh. So here we are. Here's my last 6. And I know I want my next one to be here. And I do want to show one thing really quick. So you see how this one is kind of wonky. It's just popping out. That extra thread there is a tension issue that will trouble me later. But I can fix it now. If I bring my needle underneath that thread bridge here and help it sit like that. You always want that bead to be touching the one below it. That usually happens to me whenever the 6-0 is that first one to come on. So there's just one way to fix that. And if you fix it now, you won't have thread gaps. I'm going to come up through these next 2. And I'm not going like super crazy with the tension, but I'm not being loose with it either. It's like it's kind of, there's a balance there, but I think it's on the tighter side compared to some of our other work that we do. This one is one of the ones where I'm actually kind of really pulling on it. And I know that's off camera, so I want to make sure I highlight that. There is a little bit going on there. There's our step up. So we haven't quite connected yet. And by connected, I mean our 6-0s haven't made one complete loop around just yet. They keep moving position one time every time we go around, but they're almost there. He's got to travel 4 more places before we have one complete round. So I'm starting a new row. I picked up 4 11s, and it's going to come down. And then helping those sit, coming up through the next 2. I tried this same concept that I'm doing right here. I tried it with super duos once, and it was really interesting. But because it straddles 2 columns, it actually, it kept tricking me. I didn't know exactly where to start it, but that's kind of a cool, if I ever finish that sample, I promise I will post it, but I have to take breaks from it because it's one of those ones where I kept pulling out my work and going back. So there's our next one in the row. But I know a lot of you out there, you're like me and you're already thinking ahead of, oh, what other beads will work with this? And lots, like almost all beads, I think. Like I've even thought, how cool would drops look? Yeah, just like a little drop sticking out. I bet somebody's already done that. And this is a great stitch to just do while you're listening to like a podcast or some music. You have to look at it. So shows are harder, but definitely some like audiobook or, all right. Step up here. This is really thread hungry stitch. You'll notice that as you get going, the thread gets short really fast. Okay. So I was thinking what I would do is I would bring it around one full rotation, and then we can touch base with everybody and see what we should do next. We can start over, or we can show adding thread. All those are options. Oops, I don't know if you're one there. And there's that one. Okay, so I'm just going to take a quick look here. We're getting close to adding. It's going to be the next bead I add. So there's 4. Come out through these 2. And now we need our size 6 and then the 2 11s. And so it's doing that thing again where it sticks up. I want to make sure I highlight that one more time. See where it's like not really going flat. And you can just adjust it with your fingers like I just did. Or if it's really giving you a hard time, just picking up that thread bridge and pulling it into a rainbow shape and pushing that 6-0 down. Just kind of making sure it connects to those 11 O's that are below it. And then when you pull the rest of this thread here, give it a really tight spot, tight connection there. And here's our step up. So going through 4 beads. So I'll just pick up the pace just a little bit. And don't worry if this is not totally clicking yet, because we're just getting started. We can show it again. I found when I was making the Rosey bracelet that a full length, so like say making it 6 1/4 inches or something, the clasp adds a little bit. So I made mine about 6 1/4. I used probably a good third of my tube of 11 O's for that. And about half a tube of my 6 O's, which for me was tricky because I was using a mix and I was picking out colors from a mix. So I actually ended up needing 2 tubes. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. So that's what I ended up doing with mine. I got halfway down and noticed this one has no purple in it because I was stealing all the purples. And so if you're doing a mix and you're selecting a color, you might want to pick up 2 tubes of those. Okay, so we're here and we're going to add another 6. So I've got the 2 11s and another 6, and then come down through the 2 there. And now I'm going to step up, and this I want to just say, this is the spot where I sometimes get tricked. Okay. We've made one full rotation almost, right? You can see how it's come all the way around. The next spot I need to put one is right now. So I know I just added one. It's literally the last bead I added. And I need to add another one because it's the next spot. Watch, it goes right there. I get caught up by that all the time and I pull out my work. You'll see it before you've made another couple of stitches. It'll jump out at you, but just note that's the one spot where it's non-intuitive. So you're just basically adding a 6-0 back to back. And that was what I wanted to show you. That's why I went all the way around. So I just want to make sure everybody saw that once. And now I'm starting a new round of like a full spiral. And my next one will sit right here. The next 6 that I add. So it'll be in the next round sitting right there. So this seems like a good spot to check in, see how everyone's doing. Do you want me to keep going with this one and see it grow a little more? Or do you guys want to start over? Do you want to see adding thread or anything like that?
Danielle, I can only see Cindy's got hers up to see.
Oh, wow. I see Cindy's. That's cool.
I don't know how she did it because the
Oh,
cat was
Marguerite's got
interrupting.
hers.
Marguerite's up too.
Yeah.
Pat, I don't know how are
Awesome.
you doing, Pat? Valerie? Yeah. Getting there. Amanda, I can see you. I don't know how you're doing. Good. Amanda, you're further ahead. How many? Amanda, would you put yours up again?
I'm going to switch to gallery view really quick. I want to see everybody.
Yeah.
There we go. Oh my goodness. Amanda got a lot done.
Yeah. Awesome.
You guys are good. Everybody's just going. Yeah.
So Danielle, what I'm going to recommend is, I don't have any questions from the sidebar that you haven't answered.
Okay.
And I think the majority of the group is working away and they can continue working, but I would love to make sure that we just do it one more time.
Yeah.
So the people who this is really new to, oh, Pat's unstitching. So for those of us where this is new, the second time will be great. For those of you who've already got it, you can get your next inch done in the meantime.
Sounds good. Should I keep working with these beads or do you want to see bigger? Is it easy to see these? Are these okay?
I can say I can see them well, but I'll let anybody else on the sidebar say if they're not able to see them as well.
I'm going to go ahead and cut a new strand. So while I'm doing that, you guys can think about it. I'll grab a little more here.
Yep, good colors.
Good colors. Okay.
I don't think anybody needs you to change the size, Danielle.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, there's definitely no difference in the technique at all. It's
tempting
exactly
though. It's tempting to want to see you like, can you try it with 10 O's? Can you try it with 6 O's? Can you try it with 2 O's? Like it would just be, it would be an awesome rope to keep seeing, but we'll stick to the program.
Yeah, it's the only trick that the trick that I showed in the beginning was just testing the height, right? To see matching the height of your seed bead with that bead that you want to add. And if you can get that to line up, your stitch will work. And it'll work with different numbers of columns. You can play with that. And it'll work flat if you wanted to do that too. So all of those things will totally work. And so, but I'm going to stick with what's in the handout just so that you guys have something visual that matches what you got in your diagram. And so I'm just going to go ahead and rebuild that ladder stitch, which was those 8 stacks of 2. I'll just go a little faster, but holler at me if you want me to slow down. So I've got 4 here. And again, leaving enough tail just to weave in, but nothing too crazy. Doesn't need to become a clasp or anything. So there's my first box. And you could reinforce that by going through all of them again. I find especially when I size up, so 11s, I could probably get away with just keeping it going right now, which I might just do just to save time. But when you start working with the 8s, reinforcing just becomes a necessity there because it'll just come loose when you stitch. But the 11 is with the Wildfire, because Wildfire is a really good, I think that the Wildfire 0.006 is perfect for 11.0 because it fills the bead just enough that you get a really tight stitch. And that's one pass there. So I don't know, I'm kind of excited about that. I'm always on the hunt for, you know, where the thread and the beads are just kind of made for each other. So there's my 4. I just need to do 4 more. And you're always going in the opposite direction of your exiting thread. So it changes direction with each time you add. And then I wanted to share one other note is that I started this design with just the 11-0. So meaning my first rows don't have a 6 in them. There's no reason that you can't add a 6. If you wanted to put a 6 right now and have that be in your ladder, feel free to do that. And that will give you the possibility of joining this clasp list, connecting it all the way around. And it's something that I didn't do for this one because in order to do that, you'd have to make it really, really long. And but you can join them. They can connect. And I know there's a lot of really great tutorials already out there on how to do that. It's as you probably intuitively would think that, you know, the same way we're connecting the ring, you just do that. When you get to the end, you just kind of stitching down through 2, and then up through 4. And so same concept, but if you had your 6 out in the laddered row, it would spiral continuously around with one trick. You'd have to end on the same rotation. So that's the other reason I didn't do it. Is not only do you have to make it extra long to slide over for a bangle, but you'd have to serendipitously have your last 6-0 bead be the same spot as the first one. And that might mean adding as many as 10 rows to get that to line up. So hopefully that makes sense, but I just wanted to point that you could do that. And so I only have 1 more to go, and then I'm going to join my ring. All right, so there's I've ladder stitched 8 stacks of 2. And now I'm just going to come back through those first ones. So that's my tail thread over here. You can see that little tail end there. The working thread coming out of this side. And we're just jumping over and going through the stack of 11-0s that we had on as the very first beads we strung. And when you pull tight, it turns into that ring shape. And then we want to close up the bottom of that ring by coming up through those 2 beads again. And so for where I am here, I'm going to just go back through these again so that my tail is at the bottom. And then you'll have a one little circle ready to go to build onto. Okay, and so what I did before was I just went ahead and picked up 2 11s and then 1 size 6, and then I went down through the next one. The next stack of 2, that is. Help those sit side by side. Coming up through the next 2 in the ring. And I'm going to just need to do 11-0 all the way around again. So I'll pick up 4 and go down through these next 2 here. Here's that. And I'm just going to go ahead and make those sit by pulling on that thread bridge there. So one of the reasons I use the size 12 beading needle is when you start going through the 11s, that first laddered row is going to have a lot of passes through it. It's a little tight. If you find you can't get your needle through, wiggle it around before trying to force it, because often when it won't go through, that's because it's piercing some thread. And you don't want, oh, see, I've only added 3 there. Did I get all 4 on there? Looks like I dropped 1. So because it's so thick, I am going to remove my needle and just pull that out. And then just quickly rethread that. I was short 1 bead Here's my bead. There it is. Okay, last one. And I need 4 more 11-0. I'm just going to come down through those last 2 that don't have the top row built on them. And now I've got to step up. So going through 4 beads because I completed 1 full circle. So there's rows 1 and 2 done. And we've just got that one little lonely 6-0 bead there. And again, I'm going to build clockwise. So my first set is just going to have 4. But there's no rule that says you can't start building counterclockwise. So there's those. Coming up through the next 2. And now I need another 6-0 and 2. And the reason I want to add that 6-0 is because I want it to sit in the next position, just one row up from where the last one was. And then just come down through 2. And there you go. And I'm just going to complete the rest of this row with all 11s. There's the 4. Come down through those next 2. Okay, all the way around. I'm going to step up. And my step ups are always going to have 4 beads that I'm going through. So it's just such a nifty little pattern. I ran out of 11s. Let's get more of those going.
Danielle, while you're doing that, can you just refresh me again? For you to make the one bracelet, approximately how many of the 11-0s did you use and 6-0s?
Probably a third of my 11-0 tube. Here's what I have left.
Great.
And then I used, it was hard to say the 6-0 because I was selecting for color. So
Right.
that really kind of throws it off. But I would say it'd be probably half a tube if you were just going solid color, or maybe even a little less than that.
I'm asking if anyone is trying to figure out if they're going to make more to sell, how many tubes they might need, of course. And just watching you work, when you're comfortable with this stitch and you're on a roll, how long does it take you to make a bracelet?
It's one of those ones where you probably won't work it all on the same sitting, you know, because it just gets a little bit tedious. But I built this in 2 days and I sat down 3 times maybe. I started it that morning and then went off and did some other stuff, came back and got pretty far, ran out of thread, didn't feel like adding more thread, just added aside for another day. And then that second day I came back, added thread and finished it. And here I am ready to close it up.
Perfect. This
one is, I would say it probably took me 3 hours tops to do that. And I was doing other stuff, you know. I've always got something else going on in the background while I'm working on things like this, because they don't require 100% of your attention, just enough, right? But I made it pretty long. This is one where you want to add some length so that it can have a little more space going around the wrist, because it is a bulky bend, but it does work. And adding thread becomes a little bit important, because when you add thread, you get thicknesses that can affect the drape. But if you follow the convention we always do when we add thread, where we bring in the new strand and then weave the old one up into the new rows, then you won't have that problem. And I think I'll just maybe a few more rows on here, and then we can switch to that, to showing how to add. Unless there's anyone who has questions, of course, then just feel free to jump in. And just looking at this one, I know my next one's going to need to be a 6. And then just 4 all the way around till I get back to the beginning. Seed beading is interesting because it's the opposite. I feel like it's the opposite of crochet with round stitching. Usually you only have to do your step ups on flat in crochet, but and then in bead weaving, your step ups are on the round. It took me a while to transition from that. So I just want to keep going. I think that's why I like Russian spiral so much, because there's no stepping up. There sort of is, but it's in, it just flows. It just happens without you knowing it. You did it. There's that. And where am I now? I'm about to, I need to add a 6/0 in 3 spots. So here's solid 4. And step up 32. Okay, so now it's time to add my 6 and then 2 more 11s. So I'm just curious if everyone else understood that really well. Like, and I know it's hard to explain where to put the 6 and how to know where the 6 goes, but I was hoping that that was something that we explained well, but if not, just let me know.
You're good on the sidebar, Danielle.
We're good?
Yep.
Okay. And I can certainly keep going if you guys want to see that, or we can switch to thread adding, just anything that works for you guys.
I think we're okay, Danielle, but thread adding is crucial. I'm just noticing Pat saying she's slow. She would love you to do another round. So let's do that. And then we'll do the thread.
I'm going to just finish this one. I was almost to the last spot on this one. So I just got 4 more 11s there. Goes down to the next 2.
And Danielle, Amanda is asking when you do the final 6th bead in the circle to see that again.
Oh, okay. Well, let me go ahead and get there. That'll take me just another few minutes. So we'll go ahead and stitch around. And then if anybody who's already got it, if they don't want to see it again, they can always use this as a great water break. Or I'm just going to keep going around. So we've got, you can kind of see, I feel like from the top, it's really easy to see it, easier than if you're holding it like that. If that's something that's helpful to visualize what we're doing, you can see that we need to have stacks of 11s on each of these. And then we know our next stack where a 6 replaces it is going to be this one. And so on. So I feel like it's easier to see from the top. So if you're ever kind of not sure, just hold it like that and look at it. Unfortunately, when we're stitching it, we're kind of holding it to the side, and that makes it a little harder. And so here's the top view. I know that I want to have 11s on top of that 6, but now I need another size 6 bead. And there it is. You can see it just looks like a stairs, you know, it's kind of like going up the stairs. And that was the last add of that round. So you have to go through 4 here. And something else cool to note that you can do with this stitch, you can actually change bead sizes midstream if you want to. That's something that a lot of like the beaded rope artists do, is they'll just suddenly do a whole row with like all 6 and so on. And you can transition back and forth between this stack up and that, and it works fine. I've always thought that was just a really cool feature of herringbone, is the ability to do that. It's a lot of flexibility. You can't do that in things like peyote very easily. I know like lots of people do freeform peyote, and that's another example of sizing around like this, but I've never felt like it worked for me very well. I think it's because I'm really picky about my thread showing, so I get thrown off by that maybe. So now I need another 6. You can see that's the next spot up in my ladder or my staircase. Here's 2 11s. And now I'm going to go through 4. So we completed a whole circle. We're getting pretty close to that spot where it tricks you. So I'm going to keep going. I picked up 4 and it's going down through 2 and then up through the next 2. And I've been doing this a little while now, so I really do just kind of automatically see where my 6 needs to go, but don't worry if you have to think about it more. That's totally normal. You'll develop an eye for where it goes. So here I know I want to go 2 11s and a 6 because it's the next one. So there's my staircase. And now we're at that spot. So sorry, I didn't mean to hold it up that high. We're at the spot where we're gonna, number one, we're gonna step up because we've completed a round. So we're gonna go up through 4 beads. And I just added that 6 just now. And taking a look right here, what needs to happen, something I just need to add another 6. This is that back-to-back add. So yeah, just added one. It was we added the 2 11s and the 6, came down, stepped up through the 4, and now I see I need another one right away. And that only happens in that one spot, and all the rest of it, it's a lot more intuitive, I feel like. That one kind of tricks you. So just watch out for it. And another way you can know you're getting there is when you start to see the beads show up over here. You know, you're getting close to that spot. And that was it. So I'm just going to keep going around. And that was one full rotation. And it really starts to take shape at that point where you're like, yeah, I can see how cool this is going to look. And it's really cool done in white and red as candy cane for holidays. So there's lots of possibility there.
Danielle, I have a question for you.
Uh-huh.
First of all, Amanda, thanks you for showing that again. Pat would like to know, I'm just going to read it to you. When I come out of the last 4 in the round, i.e. my thread is coming out of the 2 11 O's beside the 6 0, do I stack 4 on the top of the 6, or have I done something wrong?
Let
When I come out of the last 4 in the round.
me get to that spot and maybe that will make sense.
Yeah.
Let's see, I'm going to keep going to that spot. I'm almost there. So finishing any round, or just hopefully it won't matter where my last 6 was compared to where yours was, but let's see. Got my 4 here. Okay, so that 6-0 is always going to count as 2 11-0s. And so I'm here. I just added, this was the last column of that row. And now when I step up, I'm going to go through the 2 11s, and the 1 6-0. So in that position, your step up is going to treat the 6-0 like 2 11s. And in all other cases, you'd be coming up through 4. You would do 4. And then here, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, well, my next 6-0 position is going to be that spot right there. So I would want to pick up 2 11s, 1 6. And you'll see it as you're working, you'll see like making sure that it looks right. You don't ever want to have a spot missing. It's always got to have a friend up on the next step.
So I'm just going to ask Pat, did that make sense? No.
No, I can pull it back out and go back to that. So you guys want to see that again? Let me just quickly do. And here's actually, maybe it's cool to see this too, because as I explained earlier, I've had to pull my work out. Here's how to do it. Pinch each column individually like that in your thumb and forefinger, and just keep coming along. Pull them out. And I'm going to go back one more. Okay, so here's where we were. We were just at that tricky spot. I've gone back to the tricky spot. We're almost completing one full spiral around of the 6-0. And what I mean by, in case that's confusing, let me explain that better. The point where we've done one full rotation of that spiral is when we put a 6-0 in the same stack above that. So there's our first one that we added. And when I put a new one right here, that's one full round. And in the process of getting there, there's a spot right before you get to it that you end up adding a back-to-back 6-0. And so here we were going around. I'm about to finish the last column of this row. And so I'm going to be putting 2 11-0s and then 1 6-0 above those 2 right there. Then I'm going to step up. So let me show what that looks like. And hopefully, if not, we can always pull it right back out. So don't worry, no problem. But I'm going to just show you one more time. And so this part is kind of par for the course, what we've been doing around where, you know, they just kind of intuitively stack. We do our step up right here. And then this is just that one place where I personally get caught out because I just added an 11 and I'm not feeling like I need to add another one right away, because we usually have a few iterations before, but in this one case, you need to bring another 11 on right away, because the next spot in our stairs is that one. And then the next bead over, we'll do another round to come back. The next one is our completed spiral. So really it's the one that's right before that complete rotation. Hoping that makes sense a little bit, but it's that one there. So that's like, when I start to see this bead pop up in my field of view as I'm spinning it around, I know the tricky spot's coming. And so I just watch for it. And I got it there. And don't sweat it. If you'll see it, you might get a few rows along and you'll see it. And it's a bummer, but all you have to do is just pull it back out and go back and fix it. And you could even just, skip that one if you wanted to. That would totally be fine too. And it would still work because there's no reason you have to make it in a perfect spiral either. You can always, like for example, you could have that 6-0 bead just be in the same position through the whole bracelet. kind of like a spine. That's how I once saw a very beautiful design made by someone in one of the magazines, and I can't remember details of the magazine, but they made the large bead the center bead, and then smaller beads on the outside, and it made it look like a spine. So you could create like a little creature. I thought that was the coolest thing, and if I can remember, I'll share it. It was probably something I saw in print, so I can't remember. So I'm going to go around really quick so I can show you one complete rotation. There's that, and for there, I'm going to pull that tight. And there's 4. Here's that step up where one of the step ups includes a 6/0. And now we're there. So if I was to run my needle all the way down this whole column, I would hit my first 6/0. And so I'm picking up 1, 2 11s, and then 1 6/0. And that's one full round. So I got a 6/0 in that same spot. And that's then it's kind of it's starting over everything we've done before, all over again until you reach a length that has just enough room to come around the wrist, and then we put a clasp on it. And it takes a while. I mean, it can take a couple days at least just to kind of, you know, I don't think I've ever built one of these in one sitting where I just sit there and keep going, because it's kind of tiring, right? It takes a while also just to get the hang of how to get your tension happy. I'm very picky about my tension, and so I give myself a little perfectionist hard time about it. I've pulled out work for gaps in thread, and so for reasons like that, and something like that happens literally every time I make one of these, I'll go back and redo it, and just don't sweat it. Build that into your time estimate if you're trying to gauge when you'll get it finished. But this isn't one of those ones where if you're someone who sells your work, this is one of those ones you want to price up. It's intricate. It took you a long time, and people who appreciate beadwork like this will have no problem paying $100, $120 for a design like this. And that's what it's worth, because your time is worth that. And if you feel that, you know, there's just that market is too niche, then, you know, I hear you, because honestly, that the number of these that I actually would sell was much lower than my simpler designs that were more affordable. But I love doing something complicated and stretching my knowledge. And so these are also fantastic gifts for people who know you and know the time you put into that gift for them. So that's where you can really wow somebody and turn your time into something amazing that didn't have a lot of cost as far as like the beads themselves and things like that. So
Danielle, this is a good time for me to tell you one of the comments we received is Margaret's thinking if she is going to gift these, she's going to make it for a smaller wrist. So it maybe we'll just add a little bit more chain and findings to the end of it. But what I'm going to say is we're at a good point for me to just give you a 2-minute break. Let anyone stand up who needs a little comfort break or to go grab a glass of water. And we'll break for a few minutes right now.
I'm going to clean up my mat really quick. And then I was thinking, when I string it, I can show, meaning when I finish the design with the beading wire, I can show one idea for making it longer. If I'm going to make the stitch longer.
I will tell you, Stacy's really looking forward to you showing how you finish it off, because she's been beading for 12 years and she's never used a crimp bead. She always uses a crimp tube. So she's looking forward to seeing your crimp bead.
My crimp bead. Well, I'm using a crimp tube initially. And then I'm putting a crimp cover on it.
Ah, so maybe it is a crimped tube after all.
But just heads up, these are my nemesis. I love them. I really love how they look. I think they're so beautiful. I actually really have a hard time putting these on. So if you're with me on that, it's for some reason they just they're like, I don't know, I have a mental block to getting the round shape. I'm also, again, probably being a little bit of a perfectionist about how to get it to, I want it to be perfectly like centered. And so, but yeah, that's what those are. And there's they come from the Findings Variety Pack. There's a bunch of different finishes. Like that's the one I used in our current design, which is that like frosty finish. But there's also like this really cool
Like a
like
shell.
textures.
Danielle, does that mixed pack tell you the size of the tube?
It's actually going to work for all of your tubes. It's more like for your bracelets look. And of course, definitely if Beadalon says something different, go with what they say. But me personally, having used them for a while, I find a 2x2 crimp, which is my standard crimp, fits
Okay.
all of them. Like I can get that over a 2x2. That's the small
2x2.
one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more like for the look of your bracelet. Like you wouldn't want to put one of these big, because this simulates a larger bead. So if you made a chunky bracelet, like it will look kind of funny with a tiny little crimp cover. So this is just to give you symmetry, I think. But there's potentially also something there where like if you are using a 1x1 crimp, which I rarely actually use those in this way, but if you're using a 1, you probably want to go with a small one because a 1 might slide out of the big one. If that makes any sense. The 2x2 crimps are going to fit the small one, but a 1 might slide out of the big one.
Got it. Okay, I'll give you a second. Danielle, did you have a glass of water or anything handy for yourself?
Yeah, I just got one.
Okay, good.
Quick, I can just. So the crimps I'm using today are definitely 2x2. Are we showing adding thread actually before I get all that going?
I think you should.
Yeah, I was going to do that on the big sample because that just happens to be one that I've got in that spot. Let me get another little thread going here.
Okay, you're good, Danielle.
We good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna grab, let's see. Where's one of the last little samples I had? I left my needle on that one, so that was handy. I'm glad I did that. Gotta save a little time on that one. Okay, so what I've got here is my existing piece. And there's the tail side, the working side, and I just cut a new strand off camera there. I've got a needle on the new strand already. So that's all I've done is I've got this old one here. I'll put that in the center. And where it was left is kind of I finished a row and then I just left that working thread in place. I pulled the needle off it and it's got about 8 inches left. So just enough to weave in. I didn't let it get too short. So leave yourself about 8 inches. When your thread becomes shorter than that, it's hard to get a good weave in with it. So yeah, 8 inches is good. Here's my new thread. And this is one I know you guys have seen me do this a lot. So those of you who've been through a lot of our classes, apologies, but I'm going to go through it pretty slow because it's one of those things that's kind of important. The herringbone stitch is really easy to weave into because it locks in really fast. Like you don't really notice how many turns before the tail stops moving. So let me show you what I mean. I usually come into the work about maybe 1 or 2 rows back. Here's the 3rd row back. And then it doesn't really matter how many you travel through. Just kind of enter it somewhere, but it can help you to enter in underneath the existing working thread, because then we'll just make one solid like loop around and we'll be there, right? So just follow your thread path. And so by that, I mean just going down like your herringbone stitching from the original, you know, thread path that you did when you were adding the beads, you're following that same path again. And every time you go around, leave a tail that you can see and you can tell when it stops moving. So right now, for example, when I pull, see, watch this one right here. It moves still. So it's not a good weave in. I've only gone through 1 bead. But as I keep going, it'll get better. So I'm gonna come up through the next one here. Again, that's still moving. Move it down. Test it again. And now it's stopped. See, it only took a few minutes and now it's already locked. But just for good measure, and because I have to get there anyway, I'm gonna keep traveling around and around until I get to my old working thread. And my goal is to exit from the same spot. So let's keep going. All right, so I have a new, sorry, that was that tail there getting in the way. I have the new strand here. This is the old strand, and I'm going to continue to ignore it for now because I want to take this old strand and bring it up into some new rows. And this tail that has stopped moving, I can trim that now and get that out of the way. So I'm just going to push down and pull up. And I'm going to keep going. So let me grab some of those beads again. I might need just a few of these. Okay. So same thing we were doing before, but I'm doing it with the 8/0 and a 6mm bead. And working in that same, you know, stacks of 2. With the 8/0 beads, it doesn't fall as naturally. I have to kind of work a lot harder than I did with the 11s. You'll see that as we're going. And this one was harder to get started too, just as a warning. The bigger one, for some reason, I struggled with getting it started compared to 11/0. But once I got it, it was good. And so I also worked this one counterclockwise, and I have no clue why I did that. But you'll notice that my spiral's going this way, whereas before we were adding it in the other direction. I must have just been on a different plane at that moment when I started it. But so at least you can see that it works in either direction. And there's my 6mm bead. I'm helping it sit where it needs to go. That. And here's my step up. I'm going to make 1 more row, and then I'm going to bring my old working thread up into that. Here's that old working thread. When you're completing a row around, make sure your old working thread stays accessible to you, that you don't accidentally lock it inside the rope. Done that before. Then I can't get it out. Well, you can, but it's kind of tricky. Here's 4. And again, this was worked counterclockwise, so we're adding our beads before when I saw it. So there's that one.
Danielle, can you tell everyone again what size beads you're working with?
Yeah, this is a 6mm shell, dyed blue shell bead. It's got some pretty flash to it. I love it. And then this is an 8/0, a size 8/0 seed bead. And the color is barley ivory, in case you like that color. And I wanted it to look like shells and beach sand. So that's kind of what I'm already thinking of summer designs. And this one, I'm not actually intending to make a bracelet out of it. I'm going to put this one on silk cord at the bottom of some silk cord as like the center of like a drapey necklace. It has a really fun look. And bonus, you don't have to stitch for as long. Plus these work up faster because the beads are bigger. So I've got 4 rows now. So I feel like that's a good time to bring my old thread up into the work. So let's grab another needle really quick. Got another size 12. And here's my old working thread. I'm just throwing a needle back onto it. You can see it's 2 rows back there. I'm going to bring it up into that new row and go around one time. And then I'm going to trim it. And got all the way around. Almost letting me step up. There we go. One more. And then for the knotters out there, you can take these and knot them. If you could do that as the very first step. I personally never do, because remember when we had to pull our work out earlier, if I make a knot now and then I find an error after that, I got to cut, right? So I don't ever like cutting my work. This is a very good example of a type of design that is the reason I don't knot. Because if I had done that here, which it's intuitive to do that, and it's a very secure, fine way to weave in. But if you do, just double check that you've got everything as you like it, because it's forever at that point. But yeah, so now I would just trim this. I feel like I've gone all the way around one time, and you guys saw as we added the new thread how quick that tail stopped moving and how solid that was. So it's just okay to do here, and it's going to hold its shape just fine. And so yeah, and then you just keep going. And so what about when you get to the end? So let's say you went all the way around, and let me just get rid of this really quick.
Danielle, I'm laughing. We always joke about you not knotting.
Yeah.
I just call you the no knot Danielle, but you've made quite a few converts over the last couple of years teaching.
And it's funny, I said that, and then I did a bunch of designs with knots in them, because just like, well, the only reason like I would knot is if I don't have enough places to go. Like if I'm stuck with just a few spots, you know, or weaving in, you wouldn't really have that much real estate to work with. That's really a good time for knots, but. This one does not want to thread. And I know it's not the needle because I was just using that one. I must have really gone to town wishing this one. I'm switching. There's something wonky with that thread. Let's fix it. I'm gonna trim it and then flatten it again. And pliers. Okay, there, it's happy now. Okay, so where did I leave this one off? This one was left off. I ended with my 6 O's here, and then I completed one round that was just all 11 O. And I did that only for symmetry because that's how I started it. But again, you didn't have to. If you wanted to start your 6 O in the first row, you can do that. But because I started it that way, I ended it that way. And so the last row I did here has no 6 O in it. It just goes 11-0 all the way around. But it's open, it's not tight. And I need to tighten that down. So the way to do it without adding any new beads is just come down through 2. So this is what would naturally happen when you added your next row, but because we're not adding another row, we just have to go through and do that without the new beads. So down through 2 and up through 2, and it should bring those together. I'm gonna go down 2 and then up 2, and it should bring that all a little bit closer to the one before it and the one after it. There's that one. And there's no step up because I didn't add new beads. So you could just keep going all the way around. And when you get back to the spot where you started, you'll have something that is a little closer together. It's never going to be as tight as your laddered row because the laddered stitches are just a lot tighter. But that's good enough, right? I feel like it's good enough. It makes it, you know, at least well, it's going to stick together. If you really wanted to make it even more tight, you could go down 1 bead. And I did not do that on the sample, but if anyone's interested in seeing what that would look like, here's going down through 1 and then just 1. So that's going to bring these together too. So that's just kind of it's a knit. Nobody can even really tell. But it will close that end up a little bit more to the discerning eye. So you see how that's open there. Come up through this one. So that's if you want to, if you like it. Go through just 1 bead and then it's kind of like traditional herringbone there. And that just brings it down to a little tighter. And then all you gotta do is weave it in. And we saw just a minute ago how easy that is to do. And I'm going to go back down a few because it's a little tight there. I was doing a lot of stitching up there. So I'm going to do my weave in down here 3 rows down. And again, just staying consistent with my stacks of 2, making sure that I don't disrupt that with my weave in unless I really need to or want to for some reason, like if there's something loose. That one was tight, so I'm going to travel down another row. And oops. Nope. There we go. Okay. And back where I started, in that I've gone through 4 columns. I'm going to go and trim that. And there's the top, all done. And the bottom's even easier. The bottom where you left your tail at the beginning is the same exact thing. But if you are working with the 11s like the sample is made with, you're going to find that going through that ladder row might be tight. So I'm going to go back through this one. Then I'm going to go ahead and keep going through and do my weave in a little higher up because I don't want to go through my ladders anymore. And you also find that the starting side is already pretty tightly woven in for some reason anyway, so it doesn't need as much stress as the ending. And at this point, I'm just kind of going through whichever ones it freely goes through, but maintaining my stacks of 2. All right, I'm going to trim there. That's a good spot. And let's get the beading wire out. So when you're done, you should have something that looks just like that. It's just a rope and it's all set and it's ready to go. And then all you'll need is to finish it somehow. So many ways you can do that. You can, I don't know if you guys have ever seen when you're using stretchy cord, there's a bead-along tool that's a really long pole and you put the stretchy cord on it and use it to string the beads. That is a really great tool for getting stuff inside these kind of ropes. Once you've got them made, you can use it to bring silk cord through or even some, other kinds of stringing material. Beading wire, it holds its shape well enough that I just kind of feed it through. It takes a minute, but so I'm going to measure. I'm going to work from a spool for now, and I'm just going to measure a little bit like that. This is just because I like to save my beading wire. I'll finish one end and then cut it. So let's go through. And I just want to make sure and say this is just one of many ways you can do this. So if you like this, go for it. And if not, try something different.
Danielle, because your hand is off the camera.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. You're just trying to get that stringing wire through your rope.
Right. And it's tricky because it's going to try to come out through the beads. And I can't remember, but I think I actually used, a straw when I did the first time.
Sharon just said, use a straw.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm going to be super happy because I think from our other class, I still have a straw in here. Okay. If you don't have a straw, it's possible. I find that bending it helps. You will get it through eventually. It just may not be the most expeditious way to do it. This is a cocktail straw. And it is Friday, I'm just saying. I have cocktail straw ready to go. Not quite long enough to go all the way through, but it's going to make it a lot easier. I have a really bad feeling I'm going to get that stuck in there. Let's go ahead and pull that back out. Oh, y'all, I did get it stuck in there. It wasn't quite long enough. I have a plan B, don't worry. I think I just need something long that can just kind of poke it through. I've got to have something that'll work. Like some chain mess or something, but well, let me work on getting this through first because it came out through one of my centers there. Once I've got that through. So is that through a bead? That's through a bead. It's not what you want. So here it is. It's exiting just from here. I'm going to put it back in and just bring it that way. Get it through there. So what I'm doing here is I'm just working in between my beads to get it that last little spot of the way. The ideal way to do this, I think, would be to use a tool to bring it through. But I didn't have one handy, and I don't remember it being this hard when I made the first one. I think when I made the first one, it just went. So I'm not sure what I did.
Because you weren't live on camera, Danielle.
I know, and I do this with leather all the time, and I don't even stress about getting it through. Let's see. I wonder if I have one of those little tools. I bet I do.
You're a half an inch
Off
from
camera
here.
there. I know, I'm like right there, but for
You're
some
right
reason,
there.
it's teasing me. It's like, haha. There we go. Okay. Almost got it. One more. And then I got to figure out how to get the straw out. That's going to be fun.
Yeah, everyone knows it. They won't feel bad now when it happens to them.
Oh yeah, and or you could do it the smarter way than I did and get a real, oh look, the straw is being nice to me. Yay. Okay, I'm gonna bring this off the side. Okay. And so I'm gonna finish this end first, and then I'll cut my wire, my string over here, just so I can only use as much as I need, and I can save the rest. And this got a little bit bent up, so I think what I might do is work it up here. Well, let's go ahead and get a crimp and a crystal. We're gonna need crystal too. So there's a crimp bead. And there's, you know, there's no reason you have to use the same beads I did. You can, this is a great place to use a stash item, and you can use any size you want. I felt like that one was kind of big. That's the really big one from those bundles that we use a lot. And that one is the one I used in the sample. It looks kind of cool. It's a good size for ending it, but the one up from that would still look cool as well. So yeah, anything you like. I'll probably go with that one. And let me grab my clasp really quick. So crystal, crimp bead, and then my clasp. And if you wanted to go jump ring here, you could. And I'm going to pull that down just a little bit. Then I'm going through the crimp bead and the crystal. So I went through both of those beads. I'm just going to go ahead and pull that down. And I'm going to crimp it right about there. And so was there someone that was new to crimps, like actually doing the crimping process? I'll go slow for that, just in case. But this is the basic crimper tool, the one that's at Michael's. And all you need to do is, for the first part, is center your crimp bead in the back part of the jaw. And then when you compress it, it's going to turn it into a little rainbow shape. It's actually going to bend the crimp bead. And then you'll remove the tool and center that rainbow in the top part and fold it closed. I'll try to do that so it's visible from the top. So here's the crimp bead. Okay, and so it's in the back of the jaws. And when you compress it, I know the clasp is in the way a little bit, but can everyone see how it kind of turned into a little rainbow there? I'll remove the tool and you can see it made a little rainbow shape. I know it's hard to see, but it kind of, it took the shape of that back jaw there. It took the tube and made it into that shape. And now I'm going to turn that, close that on itself, right? Using the front part of the tool. So here's the front part of the tool. And I'm going to get it inside of there so that it closes those. You see, it kind of closed it shut. And now is the part that's really hard for me. And this is not something you have to do. It's just if you want to. I just thought it looked pretty to throw a really nice, glamorous little crimp bead at the end. And so I was going to go with one of these because I didn't use those last time. On the sample in the handout, I went with the frosted ones. And that was super cute, but I like this one too. So let's see how it looks. So your crimp bead should sit right inside of that. The tube should sit right inside of the crimp bead. And then you just need to close it on top. And if you struggle with this, don't worry. A lot of us do. It's one of those things that doesn't naturally. I started with, because it's pretty wide, I started with this tool. And then I might switch to another tool at the end once it's getting kind of almost closed. But what always happens to me is they get off center. And so I try to center them. I do think Meredith did a class on, Meredith from Beadle did a class on these exact items, and her class maybe she had some tips and tricks. So I need to go back and watch that. for getting these closed perfectly, but I do remember her kind of moving back and forth between one side and the other side for closing it. And the goal is just to get it to meet itself on each side. And finding that my crimping pliers weren't round enough, I was going to try to use the outside of my crimping pliers. But this is a pretty big crimp bead, or crimp cover, sorry. All right, if I can get this to work. Yes, okay. So there's that little open. Do you see the little open that's on it? I know it's hard to see, but there's a little spot here where it's not totally closed. I'm going to use these to do it. And I'm pretty happy with that. I mean, it's not 100% perfect, but it can spin. See how it can turn, but it's not moving up or down. But it can turn. My crystal, bring my crystal back up here. At this point, you're going to want to get rid of your extra stringing wire because it will poke out through your thing if it's too long. So I trim mine right up against the crystal. And there we go. So what you should have is something that looks like that, all ready to go. And then slide down your rope to be tight against it. And at this point, trim just enough from your spool that you know you need to get. And I gave myself a little extra, but not too much, to make it easy to get back through. And here's that. Let me get that out of the way. And now I need more crystals and a crimp bead. So let's find another 6mm in here. Just that one.
Danielle, do you have a favorite size lobster claw?
I like the ones that come in the Beadle on Finding Pack as far as size, whatever size that is. It's also the size that comes in this one, but I use them all. There was a small and then a large and then some crimp tubes down here.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up using all the ones up here. So I'm just going with that, but I think I like them that one size down from this. But this is probably easier to clasp. So I think, it's kind of a win either way. So crystal, and then my crimp bead. And so if you have any chain, like this is a great time to use your scrap chain. You can use that here. I don't have any handy, so I'm just really quickly going to make some from jump rings. And to do that, you're going to want to have chain nose pliers so you can open and close your jump ring. I like to use what's called bent nose pliers with my jump rings. So I'll take the square nose and the bent nose and I'll laterally, in a lateral motion, open them. So let's grab some jump rings out of here. There's a lot of different sizes in the Beadle on Finding Pack, the variety packs. I think this is the large one. And so there's closing that. Listening for that click. This one looked really good, like it was already kind of closed, but I'm just gonna double check that. Make it really tight. Let's put on one more. And you can always embellish the end of these. I love doing that. It's really fun. You can add a head pin with a little charm or anything you like. There's that. And I've got this ready. Go through your jump ring and come back through the crimp. Go through the bead. And then go through your rope. Just go back one bead. And I really wanted to show this part because getting it tight on here was hard for me. And you don't want it to be too tight, but get it down to where your crimp has some breathing room around your chain, just enough that you feel like so your chain can still move, right? But you want to squeeze it so the crystal's right on top, but you can still bend it. So test bending it, then tighten, and then crimp. And, be patient because this part is actually kind of tricky. But I think that's going to work for me. And then you can hold that stringing wire in place while you finish your crimp there. There's one. And I'm going to close it. And then just go ahead and trim that. I'm using flush cutters to trim that beading wire. Pushing down, pulling up. You should have a really cool bracelet, just all ready to go. So I'm gonna try it on. It can be a little tricky to button these, but.
So Danielle, then you would put the second crimp bead on.
Yeah, I didn't actually put the other one on, did I? I forgot.
That's okay.
Yeah, I would do that when I'm
on you
done.
too. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I forgot to put that other one on. The good news is this is exactly where you do it. I finish it first. You could put it on before finishing it. I had a hard time doing that for some reason. I'm not sure why, but because when it's not crimped, you just can't get the thing on top of it because you have to crimp it, right?
Yep. We've discovered today that Stacy hates crimp covers.
Oh, me too.
And I'm hoping that at the end of this class, maybe she's convinced to try it.
It's kind of love-hate for me. I love how they look. I absolutely love them. I'm just really bad at doing them. But here we go. Let's give it a try and see. And I don't know why this is working for me today. I was expecting this to be the bluebird, but for some reason they're just going.
You're making it look easy.
I didn't mean to. I came with full intention of showing struggle, but it's actually working fine. I don't completely go crazy like making them tight because I don't want to cut my beading wire because they're a little sharp on the top. So this one's not, it's not flat, and that's bugging me. So that's why I'm trying to get it to go down. There it goes, a little bit. Ah, jinxed myself. So it looks like I pinched my beading wire in it. Be real careful when you're doing that because I just did that. That's why it won't go flat. There we go. Okay. A little bit better there. But one cool thing about those crimp covers is they can be used to make up gaps. So if for some reason you got to the end of this bracelet and you felt like there was too much space here and it was really nothing you could do but restring your beading wire to fix it, you could actually put another crimp cover below this one, and it would give you, you know, it would tighten up the beading wire inside. And another cool thing about the covers is you can use them to make room for your toggles, like kind of like a little bead. You can even close them before you have the beading wire strung. You can close them and just string them on like a bead. And then they can be used to, you know how you sometimes need a little bit of room for a toggle. So that's another possibility. But yeah, it's kind of an epic project, right? But so cool looking and really fun. And I'm going to wear mine around today because I'm proud of it. And, you know, they take forever. Just go ahead and enjoy having one. So what do you guys think?
It's beautiful. Thank you. But I did want to ask you, because you mentioned other ways of finishing it. You have run leather through or like done a simple knotting? Oh,
sure. Yeah. I'm going to take a quick glance and see if I have that. I may not have one handy to show actually, but there's a tool that works really well. Hang on. I do have it. Okay. So these are at Michael's. And if I'd been clever, I would have had this out before I had the straw incident. But if you can't find a cocktail straw is probably the ideal, but if you can't find one that's long enough, this isn't actually meant for doing stretchy cord, but this can work for getting through. The only trick I'm worried about is that this may not fit through all ropes. So if you did one that was smaller than this one, it may not fit through it, is what I mean. But I believe it would be, this is just wide enough to have that go through. So that's one way. Also, you know how in the sewing section at Michael's, I just saw the ones for fixing your hoodies or your sweatpants, where you got the little to get the cords back through the hole around a hoodie or a pair of sweatpants, like at the string, those drawstring fixer thingers, that would work too. If you could get one of those. Or then there's just the keep trying way, which is how I did the first one. And that one worked too. For some reason, it just wouldn't work today, but it did work for me when I made my first one. I was able to, I might have been using a thicker beading wire. I wonder if I was maybe using something bigger than the 0.15. I did just kind of grab what I had, so it's possible that I was using a bigger one. But no rules. Yeah, I mean, anything you've got that works for you is gonna try it and see. And that's how, that's what I'm doing when I create these. I'm just playing around to see what I can get to work. And sometimes I love it. Sometimes I'm like, nah. But it's either way, you learn something and you came up with something, and it's super fun.
Danielle, your timing is perfect. So I'm
Yay.
gonna encourage you to maybe put the camera on yourself so you can see. A few people have their camera on. If you guys want to show Danielle how far you got.
Oh yeah, I see Marguerite. She's holding hers up. Let me switch to gallery. I only see the top row of people.
Good.
Let me switch here.
Amanda kept going too.
Oh hey, Valerie's got hers. Yay, I see Marguerite and Valerie.
Cindy, you did a lot.
Oh, Cindy, I see Cindy's.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, how cool. How did you get that done like right this whole time? Jeez. Okay, you're fast. You are super fast. That is awesome. Oh, cool. So if anyone has any more questions, I'm happy to answer any that you have about this stitch or anything. And I can also show our rest of the month's classes too. Yeah, so I'll bring those out. Next week is this our earrings class we're going to start switching to square stitch, and this is a really fun one that can become a lot of different things. So here's a version where we stitched it into an earring. Oh, sorry, I realized it was showing the wrong way. So this earring is made with square stitch, and then I just did a little loop through to create a pennant. And this bar is from Michael's. It's on the findings wall. But you can also, something that would be really fun to do is string them like a necklace, make a bunch of them and string them. So there's a lot of possibility there, but we'll just kind of do a quick intro to square stitch. And this is a nice project for that. And then if you're feeling like you want to do more square stitch ideas, there's other possibilities. You can make round square stitch, and you can make built onto a herringbone one, which is how I did this one. There's also a half round that I made, and I was playing with this idea. I've almost got my other idea made, the one that I introduced last week, but it's going to be one where it hangs this way and there's a little ear wire here. And instead of this little loop, I was going to do some fringe. And you could even put a gemstone there instead of a bugle, because the gemstone would hang down. So there's something there. I feel like I'm on the cusp of coming up with something there. And so I'll share that in kind of like an addendum design for a little treat for that class. And that's our last one of the month. And then we're in March, right? I can't believe it'll be March after this. I don't know where the year is going. It's just like flying by, but if you guys are in the same boat as me, I still feel like it's January.
Yes, and it's 2022.
Is it really?
Yes, I keep writing the wrong year on everything, and it's already mid-February, so it's definitely flying. So Danielle, on behalf of us and John B, thank you again for proving that you can teach an intermediate beading class via a Zoom setting. Never thought it was possible, and you've proven me wrong more than once. And everybody knows that is in this class, you have exclusive access to the recording, and that information is sent to you later. So thanks everyone for joining us. And again, we're looking forward to all our upcoming classes.
Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend, and reach out, share your designs, and reach out if you have questions. Okay, have a great weekend. Bye.